Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping into a really powerful and, let's be honest, controversial 1977 speech from Sun Myung Moon, the founder of the Unification Church. It paints this picture of a broken world, argues that mainstream religion has totally failed to fix it, and then it ends with this urgent, almost radical call to action.
Right from the jump, the speech sets an incredibly high bar. This isn't just a talk, it's a direct challenge. It's framed around this profound, catastrophic broken trust between the Creator and creation. And that question you see right there, how can He trust you now? That just hangs over everything that comes next.
So, let's really break down this cosmic problem. To even begin to understand the radical solution the speech proposes, we first have to see the world through its lens, as this perfect, divine plan that just went completely off the rails.
And wow, this slide just lays it out, doesn't it? It's such a stark contrast. On the left, you've got God's original blueprint, a totally unified world, one big human family all in harmony. But on the right, well, that's the reality the speech is painting, a fallen world full of conflict, division, and chaos. And it all stems from that original broken trust.
So the whole point, the central mission presented here, is restoration. It's not about building something brand new, but about repairing what was broken. It's all about getting back to that original, perfect state. The billion-dollar question, of course, is how do you do that?
And this is where things get really interesting, because it leads to the second major part of the argument, and it's a big one. The speech makes this powerful critique of the very institutions that were supposed to be the solution. It basically argues that traditional religions, for all their good intentions, have ultimately failed at this mission of restoration. And this really gets to the heart of the critique, right? Religions were supposedly established by God to be these universal tools for unity. But in practice, the speech claims they became kind of insular, focusing on their own doctrines and their own followers' salvation instead of the salvation of the whole world. Instead of erasing boundaries, they actually ended up creating new ones.
And to really hammer this point home, the speech zeroes in on Christianity. It points to its fragmentation, over 400 different denominations, as Exhibit A of this failure to unite. I mean, instead of one body, you have hundreds, and each one is claiming to hold the one true key.
And then comes the rhetorical punchline. The speech asks its audience, if Jesus came back today, would He really praise this landscape of doctrinal squabbles? The implied answer is a huge no. The argument is that this division is the exact opposite of what God wanted.
Okay, so if the old tools are broken, what's the new plan, right? The speech doesn't just sit there and diagnose a problem. It proposes a new, pretty radical mission for a unifying movement that it claims can succeed where all the others have failed.
And that path forward is something called restoration. But listen, this isn't some vague spiritual goal. According to this text, it's a very specific process. It involves paying what's called indemnity for humanity's past failures, and then being grafted back to God's lineage through the true parents, which is the term the church uses for Sun Myung Moon and his wife.
And they actually break this down into a pretty practical three-step path for every single follower. So it starts with that connection to the root, but then it quickly moves to tangible action and this mindset of just radical endurance. It's a path that's defined by doing, not just believing.
And this quote, man, it just cuts right to the heart of the whole thing. It argues that trust, the very thing that got broken way back in Eden, can only be rebuilt through unwavering action. From this point of view, God can't depend on your concepts, only on your consistent, tangible deeds.
Which brings us to the final and honestly the most powerful theme of the whole speech, which is right there in the title. After millennia of disappointment, the responsibility for finally fulfilling God's plan now falls squarely on the shoulders of the individual follower.
Okay, and this part is just fascinating. The speech takes this derogatory term, Moony, and completely flips it on its head. It's presented as a temporary, earthly role. You're the subordinate working to get God's will done. But the ultimate goal, which you get after a lifetime of dedicated action, is to become a sunny in the spirit world, a position of real honor and leadership.
And get this, here's another one of those counterintuitive but absolutely critical ideas. The speech claims that opposition and persecution are not signs that you're failing. In fact, they're presented as essential fuel for advancement. Overcoming hardship is the very mechanism by which you make spiritual progress.
So what kind of mindset does this demand? Well, it's total all-in commitment. As the slide shows, it's about taking personal responsibility, not just for yourself, but for the entire world. It's about seeing every single obstacle as an opportunity and, according to the speech, even feeling this empathetic connection to God's own suffering.
And this is the stark conclusion it all builds to. After going through the failure of humanity and the division of religion, the speech makes a really bold claim. God's hope for restoring his original ideal now rests entirely and exclusively on this one group of people who are willing to turn these ideas into action.
So in the end, the speech doesn't really give you an answer. It leaves you with a challenge. It cuts through all the theology to ask a really simple, direct question about your own commitment. And that's the question we're going to leave you with today. Are you a person of concepts or are you a person of action?